The shared universe model has brought the MCU huge prosperity, prompting dozens of copycat cinematic universes. However, this model is not without its drawbacks. Regulating continuity, keeping style and tone consistent within characters and across movies is incredibly difficult, and constrains creative freedom, not to mention managing TV shows and other media. How have Marvel and other universes handled these limitations of the shared universe model, and will these factors get more relevant going forward? Hello, I'm Thomas Rasmussen, frequent contributor to AP Marvel. I have with me today Anthony.
Hey, what's up?
And Izzy.
Hi.
Hey guys, so I just wanted to, I think I hear all the time, shared universes, they're all the rage, and, so many of them have failed. I started thinking about, why have they failed? And I realized that the shared universe is actually, really hard to do for a number of reasons, and I wanted to talk about some of the drawbacks of that. What do you guys think?
It's all connected. So our Chris Compendio is right now at New York Comic Con.
At the time of this recording.
At the time of this recording, and a little fun fact, he got to talk to the cast of Runaways.
Ooh.
So we'll be talking about that at another later date. But that's super cool. And he also got to speak to Jeff Loeb, the TV daddy himself.
I'm excited for that.
So we'll get to.
Please don't use that phrase again.
The TV
Jeff
daddy.
TV daddy.
No, please.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about his conversations with all those wonderful people at another time. But now we're going to be talking about the shared universe. So as Thomas was saying, this is very, very unique, but there's probably a lot of problems with it. Thomas, you were saying?
Yeah, so I wanted to start off with an explanation of what the shared universe model is, and really define it so we can talk about examples. In my mind, it's because TV series have been around forever and movie series. Yeah. But what makes Marvel unique is that it sort of has these branches that are entirely separate and maybe involve some characters from previous movies. But the branches can be going on simultaneously in universe. They can be completely unrelated for a while and then come in. And it's this idea that it's not necessarily consistent in the way a series is. It's very it just takes place in the same world, and they're different stories with different people.
Yeah. So let's talk about the history of the shared universe model. So about 3,000 years ago was the Iliad, the Odyssey, and those three. I can't think of forgetting the third one. What's the third one?
I think that's
it's the Iliad, the Odyssey,
that's
and
it. Is it Antigone?
No.
That's completely off.
There's a third book. The Odyssey is the. God damn it. So, but shared universes have existed for a very long period of time. Wait, is it just the Odyssey and the Iliad?
That's what I thought. I thought it was just the Odyssey and the Iliad.
Okay, Google says Iliad, Odyssey, and Aeneid. I can't pronounce this word. It's definitely Greek, but
it's
there's
Aenid.
Aeneid.
Aeneid. Yeah.
That sounds right.
And
pronunciation-wise and content-wise.
Tell us about it, Anthony.
So, I mean, all of these three stories are kind of all connected under the same type of arc and have some characters interwoven into it and stuff. And I don't know. It's just they're all kind of the three of them are kind of all connected. But either in a thematic way or that they're just epic stories. But everyone kind of I personally kind of see them as the first all three connected shared universe stories. But they're all just based upon myths of the day during 29 BC. So, it's kind of cool. And then we kind of have other stories. We have Lovecraft stories in the early 20th century, which are all kind of connected in their own little shared universe. And there's a couple of other ones that happened during the Romantic era. And then the first real movie shared universe was the Frankenstein, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, Wolfman, basically the precursor to what the Dark Universe was supposed to be. And that was the first time you had a bunch of different characters all appear in the same movie together. So that was kind of cool. And then you also have the Godzilla stuff, where all the monsters have their own separate movies, and then they all do like one giant team up, which they're also recreating now, which is kind of cool because of the MCU fervor.
Yeah. It's interesting that you... Oh, sorry.
No,
it's interesting that you tie in mythology into this, because even outside like the Iliad and like the Odyssey and the Aeneid, a lot of the myths delve on stuff that happened between like Zeus and Hera, or Zeus did this so Hera did that, and there's a lot of like backstory interweaving ties that you don't really notice until like you think about it in that context. And like arguably like myths are a really big basis for a lot of like not just superhero stories, like just modern tellings of stories today. And so it's interesting to look at that as a base and see how everything establishes.
So it's like kind of like an accidental connection.
And
that's kind of cool.
When you look at the model too, I mean, most mythologies, or we can think of sort of like ancient religions, they just had a collection of stories that were all sort of intended to be congruent with one another.
And interwoven and connected
exactly.
in some capacity.
And I mean, it really was not, they were not generated chronologically or anything like that, and they didn't involve the same set of characters necessarily. So, I mean, you can think of ancient storytelling around campfires as the first, shared universe model. So this model's been around forever, and a lot of the successful ones I think we talked about that are coming out today, like the Dark Universe and the Monsters Universe, and
successful.
That's not successful.
A lot of the ones that are happening right now in cinema are based on previous shared universes that were already around. Marvel
also
used the comics, right? Like that's what Kevin Feige said, is he didn't think he did anything groundbreaking because like it was already a thing in the comics.
Yeah. So it's it's important to kind of like understand how shared universes function. There's these set rules that the universe creates for itself. So you have your myths, you had your OG myths and your of like the polytheistic gods on Mount Olympus, and you have your rules of how these gods are supposed to function. And then you have all these different various storytellers take these rules that some person at some point created for the rest of the world, and then takes the rules and then applies these gods and their own take on stories and makes it and interweaves it and connects it together. So when you look at the MCU, you have Kevin Feige, the god of everything, take these rules of how superheroes are supposed to work and how cinema is supposed to work and how certain genres are supposed to work on their own, and then takes the known source material, which is like the Mount Olympus gods, the gods that already exist. You take that source material and you apply it to these new sets of rules, and then from there you elaborate, and all these different story writers and creators then build upon that and make it something of their own.
Yeah. So to put succinctly, right, the universe is established, the rules and some of the players and the powers at play are established, and then you sort of let creators loose into that space to say, here are the lines, don't cross them, and then see what you can make in that space.
Yeah.
So it has its own constrictions in like, these are the rules, but also these are that you can play in this space. Right.
So why would a major motion picture like company want to do this?
Well, you bring
people. I don't know. Why do people like this?
Well, like you bring. I think you mentioned continuity, and that's important. But there's times when Marvel's fucked up really bad with continuity.
8 years later.
But if you wanted like perfect continuity, then wouldn't you like just make like a direct series of films and like have the same people helm each one and stuff like that?
But it's not It's like also not interesting or engaging. I mean, look at I think you can argue Star Wars sort of tried to do that before Marvel, and I think the big gripe that's with the prequels, that was poorly phrased, but I think George Lucas was in charge of directing, or sort of the main force behind
he
all
was
three
directing
prequels.
and writing, and he's not a good director or even a writer. Can argue, but like the prequels tried to do something that wasn't like to many entertaining. It just, I don't know. It's so weird because Star Wars is such a unique beast on its own, because there was really nothing before it. There was no, like, the only, like, to the prequels, the universe that is set up for Star Wars, there's nothing before the OG trilogy. Mm-hmm. The only thing that exists is what's in George Lucas's head.
Yeah.
And whereas with the MCU, there's the comics. So you can always build upon something else.
Yeah, I think, like, it's nice. I think it's interesting that the MCU has, like, the comics as, like, sort of that, like, base foundation. Because a lot of times, like, creators will build up stuff from the comics, like, inspired plot lines. Like, the Winter Soldier is the first example I could think of. But it's not purely the Winter Soldier tale. I guess Civil War is a better example. Civil War is not the page-by-page, panel-by-panel conflict of Civil War. There's obviously a lot of components that they can't factor in, like the Fantastic Four, and I think Goliath is the hero that dies, and a resurrected Thor. Like, they can't follow it page by page. Yeah. And that's where I think that's where the creative talent comes in, to sort of make it their own and make the MCU, like, fresh and unique, because having the same voice tell the story over several years can
get repetitive.
Yeah, and boring and stale. And arguably, like, Kevin Feige has been the one, like, creating all these movies, but, like, as a watcher role, that's a little bit better. But that's a little bit better than having someone like having Jon Favreau direct, write, and produce all 20 movies of the MCU so far. Actually, it's 19.
Yeah, but it gets tiring, and when you look at, like, Star Wars, you see some of the problems because it doesn't pick, like, the writers and directors are kind of one note. You could say that J.J. Abrams has kind of a unique aspect, but what he created was not something of his own, was something that was Star Wars based. Whereas with the MCU, you have different diverse writers and directors to add to this story, and to add to this, like, you have Taika and you have Ryan Coogler, who all add incredibly different and unique takes on already explored and written characters. Now it's just taking them to another unique level. It keeps the universe fresh and different. And I mean like, if you're looking at, like, other things, it's like actual diversity too. When you have diverse, like, if you have people of color directing and writing stories, you have more diverse perspectives. That, instead of just, some one-note white guy writing a movie, it kind of can get kind of repetitive and boring. So when you have, like, I've talked about it before, but when you have, I've read about it and I've mentioned it before, but, like, with Star Wars, with having a shared universe, you have kind of, we're going to make this more diverse, but you make the characters just have, like just be people of color, but it doesn't really build upon the storyline isn't diverse in and of itself, and that's where the problems can arise. Yeah. But going back to the MCU, it just comes down to unique story building. Thomas?
Yeah, so it sounds to me like what we're saying is that the shared universe model is a really great way to manage a very large single continuity and keep diversity and interest and variability high by allowing lots of different creators with their own takes and perspectives to add their own contributions to that universe, right? And it's better than sort of having all of those different creators make their own movies that are totally separate, because there's a feeling of like, oh, if I go to watch this movie, which is crazy and wacky and in space, like that helps me to understand what happens when I go back and watch this other movie about like people battling in New York and stuff like that. Like there's this feeling of progression and continuity while still watching what is essentially a bunch of separate but very good movies made by different people.
There's this.
So, like, when you look at... Oh, Izzy, go.
There's this paper that it's 100 pages, and it was written before Kevin Feige's big press conference in October 2014, but I think it's still relevant to this topic. But it's essentially a paper about the shared universe, and it's interesting you talk about, like, how one property should, like, enrich the other, because the point of a shared universe is that you can theoretically watch any movie in it, and you don't need anything else, but the other movies will help enrich your understanding of it. And like that's where the beauty of like the individual franchises come in. Granted, you can't. There are some movies where you just like you can't walk into Infinity War, I think, and like try and like and go without like that past experience.
And I think that's one of the.
Is, like,
Sorry. Yeah, I mean that when it comes to like Infinity War, that kind of gets to some of the issues of what a shared universe has. Is if it gets too big, and you try to have these big connective tissues, at some point you're going to have watched a lot of it to understand it,
right.
which is what like some of the problems that are starting to arise with like the criticisms for Infinity War was that, well, all the other movies before Infinity War, you could have watched them on their own and they could have been good, whereas with Infinity War you needed to have watched at least 75% of the films to understand what happens in Infinity War.
I would argue. So, our co-teacher Erin just texted us that she had met someone who had only watched Thor, Doctor Strange, and Infinity War, which was the weirdest collection of movies. I don't know. She just said that they only just watched those three, but. There are certain movies I think you have to watch with Infinity War. Like Civil War, I think, is an important one. The Avengers, The Age of Ultron. But for the most part, to fully feel the weight, it is at least 75%. Even like our Stuco now, we say that you can't have... We say that in our Stuco, like you don't have to watch like Marvel, and you can go in and still learn something. And you do learn something, but to participate in discussion... It really does help if you were or are a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and you watch like all these films beforehand, or for our homework is just watch these movies. And sometimes like people neglect to do that because they have no time. It's college, but it's an interesting like point to bring up.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I think that we should dive into some of the limitations, right? Because this shared universe has been going on for basically 20 movies by this point. And we're starting to see some of those limitations crop up. I think it was Civil War where the Russos said, we're done catching people up on the universe. If you haven't seen previous movies, Civil War is not for you. We've talked about how, some people like, they have to go back and rewatch a bunch of movies before Infinity War comes out, or they're like not going to understand what's going on. Even the people who watched it are like having to go do research to go see a movie, and that's going to get worse as time goes on, right?
Yeah. So one of the things was like one of the big tenets.
Yeah,
I can't think of the word. Yeah, of the MCU was that it was a film franchise for everyone, so you can watch any movie at any time and understand what was going on, and you wouldn't have to have watched any of the read any of the source material, and still be able to understand what's going on. And now we're hit that point where maybe it's too big, and it can be scary. So that's like some of the things I was thinking about.
Yeah.
But
my friend so my friend had told me this after Infinity War, and he essentially felt the same way about the MCU after watching Infinity War that I felt after watching Solo, and it's that I think at this point Marvel should slow down. He was arguing that there were more. the joke about Solo there, but there were he kind of felt overwhelmed.
You can joke about it.
He kind of felt overwhelmed by how much Marvel movies there were, and he argued that after Avengers 4, they should just break off and make a new universe with the Eternals. I guess is a movie to break instance, but by doing that,
that's something we're going to talk about.
Break the universe model. Yeah,
that's actually in the part 2 for this one is new continuities, but
So I was gonna just make a quick little aside to looking at the other big shared universe, the DC universe. The only considerably great movie in it was Wonder Woman, and it was a complete departure from the rest of the other movies in what is the DC universe. And I think having something that is a drastic difference makes something unique and different and cool.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. So, we'll talk about that more in our part 2.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and then, we can...
Also, if you haven't mentioned, there's a part 2.
They'll figure it out. When 2 different episodes come up with the same title, they'll figure it out. The listeners there's some clever kids out there. But, we can talk about Wonder Woman a little more, because when she was brought back in Justice League, it certainly did not save that movie.
Yes.
And it's sort of begs the question, well, if instead of doing a shared universe model, DC just made movies about superheroes that didn't talk to each other or interact, maybe DC itself would be better off. Right? And you could definitely argue that The Mummy was a worse movie because of its attempt to cram in a bunch of world building and stuff like that for future movies. So I guess my question is, what are these other cinematic universes doing wrong that makes this model not work for them?
The big thing, I think, is that they're going too fast, because Marvel's...
They're trying to build big day one.
Exactly.
Iron Man was good because it was good on its own. If Iron Man was just the only movie, it would have worked. And then it was the end credit scene that made it crazy.
They made people realize, oh, we're building up to something big here. And I think in this mad rush to catch up to Marvel, they're not realizing that the thing that made Marvel successful was time, and they're trying. I think DC tried to get a head start, but obviously shat the bed, and so that's the thing. The big buildup is the big problem, because it's hard because you want to get people excited for your movie, but you also need to produce a good movie first and foremost. I actually would argue that for The Mummy, I actually enjoyed Russell Crowe in it, just as his character as a performance. And
you saw? Wait, whoa, hold on.
Oh my god!
Of all the people, of the 6 of us,
I saw The
Mummy. Who are teachers? You're the only person who saw The Mummy.
Wait, what? I thought you and Chris watched it at the very least.
No. I did not see The Mummy.
I've just seen a shit ton of reviews for The Mummy.
I saw The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser Mummy, which was very fun because it was dumb in the mid-2000s.
I'm glad that Izzy saw The Mummy so that she could contribute to the discussion in a more informed way.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that is,
and that's the only reason I would be glad that she saw The Mummy.
Speaking of bad movies in
out?
Other universes, I'm gonna see Venom in 2 hours, so that will be great. Yeah.
I don't think because there's not enough content out there to talk about the Venomverse. Venverse.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
But I do want to talk about other cinematic universes, because Marvel was so successful. Everyone was like, oh, the key to their success, what they're doing differently is all these characters talk to each other from different movies. Let's do that. And then it didn't work.
Which is very nearsighted.
In fact, I think that otherwise perfectly capable directors and writers and actors fail when they attempt to take on a shared universe approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because these lines that we have to create for the creators to like do their thing and be collaborative can be really limiting on plot and character, and especially on like the tone. When you look at like Justice League, obviously like Zack Snyder was like he was trying to do it Zack Snyder way, and then he
was dealing with also the death of his daughter.
Yes.
And then
but it's a very
and then
different...
Josh Whedon came in and then also added his take, which was very different from Zack Snyder's. So you have two very different styles mixing together, and
they weren't mixed. Though. They didn't mix. It was one or the other at any given moment of the movie. There was no feeling of blending together I don't know how to describe the tone of Wonder Woman in an easy sentence, but like it had a very different tone to that movie.
If Nando v. Movies movie, like Justice League's version, actually came out, it would be so much better.
Oh yeah, I just finished the 4th part yesterday.
Oh yeah, I watched it I think 2 days ago. It was very good.
It's good. But my point being,
highly recommend everyone to listen to Nando v. Movies 4-part video
series.
This
is a free plug for Nando. Nando, if you're listening, we plugged you.
He probably
just keep that in mind. If any requests to be on the podcast come up soon, just remember this. No, I was going to say that managing tone alone, let alone plot and dealing with sort of characters who have gone through arcs before, and you have to fit those in. These can all be incredibly difficult tasks, and if a director, for instance, has a major life event that like goes on, and they have other things on their mind, I don't think that like a director is capable of handling all of those challenges,
But if the director affects the movie in that big of a way, then there's other pieces that then there's other problems with it. Like,
you think so?
Like, we've had bad directors in the MCU, but the movie was still good.
Fine. Like, it's still...
the movie was still fine. Like
in Rotten Tomatoes, it's still, like, fresh.
Thor the Dark World is, like, not good, but it's good on, like,
You'd watch it over other movies.
Yeah, you can watch it, like it's better than fucking Daredevil.
Solo.
The movie, and Solo. So,
no, yeah, that's like, true.
Yeah.
And like look at, and I think so in our notes here we talk about how there has to be different color grading, visual effects, that if like can the shared universe have different color grading and visual effects and tone and still be connected and cohesive. And we've seen in the MCU that it does. But I know this is kind of like turning into like shitting on DC's shit job of a universe, but like it's just all darkness and drab, and there's nothing fun. Aquaman looks cool now, so like that seems like a place to a second start in the right direction, and Wonder Woman was the first. So good.
Also, you just remind. I completely forgot to watch the 5-minute Aquaman teaser before.
It's actually pretty good. It's
right.
not gonna lie. Like it's.
I'm very excited.
Let me summarize
what's going
for
on,
you.
Which is good.
You go. It's about the trailer, the first trailer, and then it's.
It was always
connected.
a plan.
Yeah,
there was always a plan.
Yeah.
In Infinity War,
are there limitations when it comes to visual effects in the MCU?
I think that there should have been, but surprisingly, there have not been any consequences.
But it still works. I think that the only time there's ever been a visual disparity was with Black Panther. I think that Black Panther's visual effects are the only.
I feel you.
Are the only bad portion of that movie. I think that they could have been way better, and I think that's because when they were making that movie, they either rushed or they didn't think this was going to do as well.
And if you want to nitpick, you can look at like the Incredible Hulk had crazy weird CGI on the Hulk and the Abomination, which like they wouldn't do nowadays.
But I think that's also like 2009. I think that was. I think at the time that was fine. It wasn't great, but it was like on par with a lot of the
Adequate.
other average movies that were out there. Black Panther's visual effects were not good. Especially with Infinity War coming out in May and Thor Ragnarok right before it. And if you see both of those visual effects, they're much more polished. And I think that's because of what people thought was going to be like an okay movie. But Black Panther turned out to be amazing.
Yeah.
And that comes down to plot. Like, it tells a very intense story about race and what does it mean to be a black person, which is like really intense. And for like a movie universe that has ant people, Ant-Man and
Small people. Yeah.
Our universe also has small people, Anthony.
No, I know.
But I completely forgot.
I'm gonna jump in and let you recover your thoughts. Like, jump in whenever you remember. But I'm thinking about in Infinity War, the battle on Titan, where you have the Guardians of the Galaxy who have their own visual style next to Iron Man with his own visual effects style next to Doctor Strange, which the most ridiculous visual effects style of all.
The fucking hands!
And just like kind of
come and get them hands!
Yeah. Like, it sort of felt like it worked because Iron Man and Spider-Man were for the most part very grounded. The Guardians were in space on their home turf, so they felt like they were at home. And Doctor Strange was purposefully supposed to be very strange, like weird dude. Yeah. And his visual effects are super weird and jarring, but like then the characters in the movie get to be like, "Whoa,
that's the point.
What the fuck was that?" Like,
yeah,
that's it.
Like that whole sequence where he like tries to put Thanos into the mirror dimension when he goes fucking ninja shadow whatever that thing is from Naruto, and he's just fucking 30 hands and clones himself like that shit's. That's fucking wild. But what makes that so cool and what makes that scene awesome and like just differing from all the other characters is that there was no one really else in those scenes to kind of make it different. The only time Doctor Strange used his powers combined with like other people's powers was when he created portals.
Was when they're holding Thanos.
When holding Thanos and was creating portals and platforms.
Jump through and all that stuff. Yeah.
I think this.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, sorry. I think visual effects are interesting in like talking about the shared universe because there are instances like I think it is very up and down. I think the visual effects didn't stand out to me as much in Black Panther because the rest of the movie, like plot wise, story wise, was so amazing and it's like just overlooked. But you can see like for some characters they are like infinitely better. Like Thor is obviously the biggest example. And I remember, like, when watching Infinity War, like, that was the first movie where I was, like, blown away by, like, all the possibilities and, like, special effects and, like, the creative limits that they really push. Like, I think for visual effects, like, the limitations are, like, a bit less strict because there's, like, magic and stuff. And so, it's interesting when you compare the limitations of, like, visual effects and the boundaries that they reach when compared to like the plot and the story and the characters. So it's a little bit wider.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing like in Guardians 2 where you had a lot of color and then all of a sudden you have Civil War which is like fucking gray like style. Yeah. Like that's the color of Civil War is gray. Like the entire airport scene, there was nothing colorful about it except for what they were wearing.
And then the bunker in Russia, like made of concrete, was the grayest thing they could have followed up that gray scene with.
Also, thank you, Thomas, for using the proper word, concrete, and not cement, like many fucking plebeians use. As a civil engineer, it is concrete, not cement.
I'm not gonna lie.
You wouldn't call an apple pie an apple. They are not synonyms. You wouldn't call, hey, that's a person over there. You wouldn't say, no, that's water. Because there's water inside of a person. There is cement inside of concrete. There is also water and sand and aggregate. And that's what concrete is. Understand that. Loser.
Yes.
Is the civil engineer rant over?
This might be.
Here's the metaphor. Here's the metaphor.
Takeaway.
You have your sand. You have your sand, which is like the fine materials of which is your Thor Ragnarok. And then you have your aggregate, which is your Civil War. Then you have your water, which is Black Panther. And then you have your cement, which is the Avengers. And all of it together makes a concrete shared universe.
I don't know how to feel about that.
All of these unique pieces
or we should
make something that could stand on its own. Look. If you've ever felt cement, it's very fine and it feels like clay, and it could just fall right through your hands. Sand falls right through your hands. Water is water, and aggregate's just a bunch of rocks. But if you put all of them together, they create the building blocks for which, like hundreds of thousands of buildings are supported on.
To be fair, your metaphors are really awesome. It's the pun that killed us.
Oh,
I just want to let you know that.
What pun?
The concrete shared universe.
Concrete shared universe? Yes, that was a very good pun. Thank you. Yes.
I'm upset about that. But you do make very good points tying in civil engineering.
Now we gotta think of the bad things. What are the bad things? We're not really talking about the bad things.
Okay.
I think we're doing like a half and half job, but bad things. Let's go.
All right.
The rest of the episode we're talking about bad things.
The existing MCU constrain the plot and character work that can be done in future movies?
I think
it can.
No, I think the big fuck up that Marvel's done is 8 years later and talking about how, like they were saying, like Peter is the kid in Iron Man 2 who's like who's trying to blast fucking Ivan, and then Tony Stark's like, nice job, kid, like that sort of like tying in. I think that's the big contributor to like the 8 years later fuck up, and it's a instance where I think they wanted to allow like for some like cute little things, but at the cost like really weren't paying attention to what they wanted to do. And I think like as the universe gets bigger, you have to pay more attention. And I think that they're sort of trading in like, telling new interesting plots, which is great, for really paying attention to all the older stuff that came before. Like with Captain Marvel coming out in March, you ask the question of how is this going to tie into like Nick Fury? Nick Fury has 2 eyes. The last time he trusted someone, he lost an eye. And Coulson is back. So like how are you going to tie in like his work pre-Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? And it's just, I think it's just getting harder. It's a lot of, I think, mental work to keep that story consistent.
Yeah.
Also, it just like thundered in Pittsburgh very suddenly.
No, it's been raining for a while.
I'm scared to go outside.
It's been raining for a while.
It was raining and it was super sunny and then started raining.
Yeah,
again.
It's like summer. It's like summer weather right now, even though it's October. So,
but like it's the same thing. It's like way too hot out right now. It's like 80 degrees.
Look at Phase 3. We're asking him like, is this sustainable? Look at Phase 3. Black Panther. I'm gonna go backwards. Ant-Man and the Wasp was pretty good. Avengers: Infinity War, to many controversial, but it was still pretty good on money standards. Black Panther, yeah. Thor Ragnarok,
yeah.
Spider-Man: Homecoming, Spider-Man's first movie in a while, and it's pretty freaking awesome. And Far From Home looks really cool. So Tom Holland is awesome. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Dads Are Bad. Doctor Strange, fun. Civil War, amazing. That is like an amazing streak of movies already 8 years into this fucking experiment.
So what's interesting to me about that sort of list is I think that a lot of those... So we talk about the model that Marvel's chosen, which is not the only way to do a shared universe, but it's one they've done. Is they made a bunch of movies to start with, and then they like combined them into one Avengers, and then boom, they all go back out to their separate stuff, and they combine into Avengers 2. And they can do fun stuff. Like they can do Black Widow in Winter Soldier, or they can do Hulk in Ragnarok, right? Like they don't have to all be separate, but it's generally conglomeration episode, boom, into separate episodes, into conglomeration. And I think that that's one of the ways that they handle this, is they go, okay, Avengers 2 happened, here's everything that happens in Avengers 2, everybody, you're starting from there, nobody get in each other's way, nobody cross over, everyone go to different planets, go to different, like, countries, like, whatever you have to do, we're not messing with, like, intercontinuity in between the giant crossover episodes, once they've picked their sort of, like, corners. I'm thinking about, like, in Luke Cage when Iron Fist joins him for, like, an episode to be like, yeah, be centered and shit. Can't really...
in Iron Fist, Luke Cage is there?
In Luke Cage, Iron Fist...
No, in Luke Cage, Iron Fist is there.
Okay. Now, this is a really quick tangent. Where is Iron Fist in Luke Cage compared to Iron Fist Season 2? During or after the season?
It's before. It's before Season 2.
Oh, okay.
It's so like he just sort of makes a 1-episode cameo to like teach some lessons and like go off. That's way less common in the cinematic universe to have a character like come over and for just like a little bit.
No, they did it. They did it, and it did it fucking amazingly well.
In Thor Ragnarok and Doctor Strange, but that's still the only... In Thor Ragnarok, they had Doctor Strange come in, but that's still, like, the only instance of that happening. And, like,
Ant-Man, you had Falcon. The entirety of Civil War.
Yeah,
Civil War was a lot more like one of those conglomeration episodes.
That was the point of Civil War, like, to have, like, a bunch of people... I was gonna say Homecoming, but Tony Stark is too integral to the movie to, like, say that about him. Mm-hmm. But, like... I think the one that stands out, like, right now to me, like, in Phase 3 was, like, Doctor Strange, because I think...
You mean Thor Ragnarok in Doctor Strange?
That's what I meant, sorry.
I think Thor Ragnarok is like the... it's not the keystone, because it's not the first piece, but it's a very foundational piece of what this universe can do. You have a cameo of a main character appear for, like, 5 minutes, and it's fun, and it's quick, and it's awesome.
Exactly.
And like that makes this so cool. That shows the cool qualities of the universe. And then on top of that, you have Hulk, who you haven't seen for 5 movies, appear and kick butt and hang out with Thor the rest of the movie. That's cool.
Yeah. And I think that what you have to do is you have to do that mental work to say, oh, wait, where is Doctor Strange at this point in our continuity? Because he's been practicing for a while, so he's way better at all this stuff. He's teleporting around the place. He's familiar with the Sanctum, right? Like, he's got his list of mystical threats. Like, Doctor Strange has had progression, and we need to take that in mind for this cameo. And you need to do that work and think about where these characters are. And if you can do it all, it's awesome. It looks really cool, and it feels like a crazy moment. But if you had seen Thor Ragnarok without seeing Doctor Strange, do you feel like that cameo was, like, out of frickin' nowhere and weird?
No.
I
think it fit.
I think understanding that Doctor Strange is just, like, in the Marvel Universe, because, like, well, for one, it's Benedict Cumberbatch. Like, you can't imagine, like, that an actor that caliber will have, like...
Yeah, some people don't know who that is.
That's fair. He's getting his way there. But, like, the big thing you take away from that is that he is a big guy in this universe, and we'll see more of him.
In the future.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of went back into the good qualities of this. Fuck.
Yeah, I think we're all more likely to say that this is a really cool thing that's going on than, like, this is a really problematic thing.
Yeah.
So I could play devil's advocate a little bit more if you guys would like, but I think that kind of hard work of figuring out where a character is going to be and working with other directors to figure out, like, when that's happening is something that Marvel does really well, but is, like, a huge amount of what goes into Marvel's movies. And with other universes, they don't do that very well because they don't realize that that's such a big part of it, and they lose that cohesion. And they haven't even... No other universe has made it to, like, 10 movies. You know? Like, it only gets harder.
If you look at all the problems that, like the problems that the MCU has, like, in movies and just, like, in general, I think the biggest cracks are actually shown in Infinity War, where this is no longer a movie for... This is no longer a TV series, a movie series for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, the villain is incredibly problematic. Where do they go from here when they kill off everyone? Like, it's like, how do you tone it down from going too big? Like, what are the next steps to be better? And I mean, we've talked about kind of like the next steps to kind of like the power creep stuff with me and you, Thomas, and Sabrina. How do we tone it down? How do we bring it back? Because, like, we're doing the Eternals, but we'll talk about that in part.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that color grading thing, because we, in our class, talk about how in the Avengers, in order to make all of those 6 characters with their different visual styles and different visual effects and different colors look like they belonged on those streets in New York, they used a very flat color palette. They used a very, like, bland thing to just homogenize it. Right. And that was so they had this challenge, which was connecting these characters visually, and they solved it with this color palette. And then they said, all right, moving forward, everyone use this color palette. Everyone do it like this, so that we...
That's what they did with Age of Ultron.
Universe. Yeah. And then people were like, these movies look ugly. This is awful. And so they had this problem that was caused by their shared universe that they then needed to solve. And what they sort of ended up doing was being like, all right, well... You know,
Avengers Infinity War actually
you could
fixed
be
that.
colorful. Yeah. Well, no,
where you had your reds and your orange and your yellows
on
Titan. Mm-hmm. And you had your green and your dark blues on Earth.
I think Wakanda was less vibrant than it could have been because I think they were constrained with color grading. I think that Titan would look really bad, but like that's sort of the point of Titan, but still. I thought that the only place that looked really cool was the forge with the dwarf and the... I don't know what that place is called.
Nidavellir?
Nidavellir.
That's a made-up word. Yeah.
That place like looked cool visually, but I thought everyone else was trying to look that same like flat kind of grounded. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that they filmed the Wakanda battle in like a literal horse pasture.
In Georgia, yeah. They had to make a river.
I don't know.
They had to make a river for that.
It was a little bland, color-wise, because it's hard to connect all of these different looking characters.
Yeah, I think they're certainly getting better with. I feel like it's a tad more colorful than what it used to be, but even when you look at even when you go back down and downscale, like with Ant-Man and the Wasp, like you notice. Like, it's a little bit more colorful, but, like, it is still, like, pretty grounded. Even, like, the, God, what's it called? The subatomic dimension. Yeah. Like, even that, like, yes. Even that was, like, really crazy and kooky.
And it didn't make any sense.
It also was very... Yeah, it also didn't make any sense. But, like, I think they learned... I think after Guardians 2, they learned, like, not to be too crazy with, like... They learned not to be like restrained with like the kind of colors that they want, or like just really try to push things visually, but also trying to keep like a repressed like same balance. Like they think they're balancing that like a little bit.
Yeah,
they're trying to balance that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we will be talking about that we haven't touched on yet, unless Thomas, you wanted to say something on visual effects.
No, you should go.
We're going to be talking about this more in full about the music of the MCU, but one of the big problems that we have is that we have all these different composers for all these movies. We have all these different directors, but on top of that we have way more unique composers, and they not always carry around the same themes that we've seen in other movies. Whereas like the Iron Man theme from Iron Man 1 is different than the Iron Man theme in Iron Man 3. And it would be cooler to have that. I mean, the only thing that has been wholly consistent that everyone loves and actually really likes is the Alan Silvestri Avengers theme. Which you hear a little bit in Age of Ultron, but you don't hear it as much.
And you don't hear it jazz version at the beginning of these episodes.
Yes, you don't hear it as frequently as you would want in Infinity War. And that's more of a personal gripe.
I really hope they fix that in Part 2.
I think they will because they wanted to make it darker. And one of the issues that I have with Infinity War is that it doesn't have the other themes. You don't hear Cap's theme. You don't hear Iron Man's theme. You don't hear Thor. You don't hear the Guardians compositional theme. You have their their aesthetic with the 70s music, but that's it. I'm talking about compositional stuff, and I think they could do it next one, because the next one's supposed to be a little bit more fun. All the heroes come back. Captain America dies.
I expect to cry. I expect to cry from joy.
See, here's the thing: when Captain America dies, they gotta play his theme. It's gonna be. It's gonna hit. It's gonna hit really hard.
Guys, I just know I'm gonna cry when I watch Avengers 4, and none of you can stop me.
I mean, you cried in Avengers 3.
How would we even attempt to stop you from crying? What would I?
I mean, Thomas has seen me legit bawl.
Dude, we were all bawling in Infinity War. That was a lot.
That was so much.
I was talking about Guardians 2 when I was a literal mess.
Oh yeah, Guardians 2 was. That was.
But yeah, back to the podcast.
So
I feel like
before
you go on, I feel like I guess the thing on positives and sort of criticisms, I feel like we've been peppering those in throughout the episode. We say the plot is weak, or not the plot's weak, but the plot is there's a lot of constraints, but we sort of come to an understanding, and so it's a fair. It's we sort of balance it out, I guess, but. I mean, so I guess Chris.
What it sounds like to me, not as in a conclusion, but just here's what we got so far, is that managing that continuity with the plot is work, and it's communication, and it's people being willing to accept those constraints on what they can do. And that's sort of the same case for sort of visual effects style and color and sort of the character progression. It's all about being willing to accept that you have to respect this other body of work, willing to communicate what you want to do and compromise on that kind of stuff. And that Marvel does it well. And I hope other cinematic universes are doing it well, too, because I think it works really well when you can do it. But it's a great way
when you make more compromises?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
So.
Yeah.
But not like Iron Man 2 compromises. Not like everyone sort of rolls over and let's whatever needs to happen.
I think with the Edgar Wright stuff, with Ant-Man, I think Feige and co. kind of learned from their mistakes and said, hey, we made mistakes in the past. We're going to let you guys do things. We're going to say, hey, can you guys do this? Or can you guys do this? It's maybe we should change it. And it's okay, then do it. And they did. With Thor.
They're learning.
I think part of that...
if you remember from the 2014 presentation of what Thor Ragnarok was going to be, it was this really dark and gritty, little mini, the...
hollowed out, empty, everything is destruction.
No. It's just the 3 seconds of the title of what the Thor movie was going to be. It looked more dark and like the Dark World. And... then Taika Waititi came in and was just hey, I never read these comics. I never did anything. Let's just do Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah. And I think a big part of how Marvel does it differently, or at the very least, how a good studio does it differently, is you open with these constraints. You say, we already know, we're in the job interview, here's what is going on, here's what you have to respect and work around. Besides that, go to town. And then directors are great at being oh, so I can do this, and I can do this, and this would be really cool.
But I think if you're making a universe, if you're making a movie, like a Quentin Tarantino movie, that is, I mean, all the Quentin Tarantino movies happen on Earth. So you're constrained to the rules of how Earth works.
Right.
So just take those rules of Earth and just say, no, fuck that, and just constrain it to the rules of this universe.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Go to town with that.
I think that the big problems...
Any genre, any adventure that you want to do can happen. Romantic comedy, noir flick. I mean, what genres have not happened? A horror movie, a straight horror movie.
I'm looking forward to Doctor Strange too.
I'm looking forward to Doctor Strange too.
No, I think where it becomes...
I'm looking forward to Doctor Strange too.
Where it becomes a problem is when the studio comes in with their constraints after the movie is already underway. And they're like, oh, we sort of don't like this. Can we do something else? Or like, oh, let's change it up like after. And I feel like that's really common. Because you're allowed
like for people to sort of... Yeah.
Right, you're allowed to like take a movie that's half finished and be like, let's take it in a different direction. Or like, let's add some different creative people on here. Change it up. And I think that's an issue. I think Marvel's very good at being upfront and being like, here's what you can do. Here's what you can't do. Have fun with it. And then it sounds, all the directors I've heard, like Taika Waititi and James Gunn and all these people have said, like, Marvel's actually really, like, helpful and supportive and, like, they're really good about this. And I think the reason they can do that is because they can be, like, right up front and be like, you can't, like, overwrite the continuity from previous movies.
And they also learn from their mistakes in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And luckily they're good enough that they have the ability to learn instead of, like, just being done. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the case for other things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'll get more into like learning from I want to get more into learning from their past and moving forward in the second part, but I think it's an important mindset that Marvel has, and it's a great mindset that they have and that they hopefully continue moving forward.
Yeah, I hope so.
Forward. As more movies are added, what happens to these problems? And I think we kind of talked about how most of Phase 3 has been like this really great streak of really diverse, unique movies that I think if they continue to have unique, diverse movies, you have your Eternals, your Dark Avengers, then I think those problems can be fixed. But if they go too big too quickly, or if they make it too ridiculous... Well, actually, let's not say that, because too ridiculous works. We saw with Guardians. But if they make it... if they don't have diverse writers, then then the problems are just going to continue. Yeah. Anything else, guys?
I mean, I think that these problems do get harder, but I think that more greater difficulty is met by an understanding, at least in Marvel, being like, we've been doing this for a long time. We know how to do it, right? We're getting better all the time to meet that like increased existing continuity, the increased challenges of different characters and weirder characters being brought in. So far, they've kept pace, and I hope they continue to keep pace. I hope they continue to refine and improve. And if they plateau, they just need to put in more time communicating and doing research.
Take a break on movies that come out a year.
Yeah.
Instead of 3, which did happen, let's bring it back to maybe 2 or 1.
Let's bring it to 2. Also, release them like later.
If Marvel
in the year,
released
like
a movie every week, I would go see it in theaters every week. Just to be clear, Marvel, I'm good. I am not the limiting factor here as an audience member.
Yeah, just make good movies. That's it.
Yeah.
Make good, enjoyable movies that, build upon this universe in a fun way. And yeah, I know it's for money, and I get that. And, capitalism's a bitch all the time, not some.
You can have my money, Marvel. But just keep doing what you're doing, and you can have it. It's yours.
Yeah.
So I was talking about sort of Marvel gets better at doing things. They, like, develop a process, and they refine that process. So what are some of the things that Marvel does to manage their continuity and dealing with the shared universe model? And I'm looking for one thing in particular that's going to lead us off into our part 2 that's coming.
Is this
listeners at home next week? I don't know. That's probably how we would do it.
Probably the week after we release this one.
Yeah, coming next week.
Is it the scroll that you're trying to refer
to?
The
scroll. It's so definitely not that. That's not even remotely close.
I don't know.
Oh God, is it?
Thomas, just do it. Just say it.
Okay.
Is it character based?
So Marvel loves separating their characters in the universe to like their own completely separate corner. Like just like think about Wakanda as an idea. Like a hermit kingdom that has had no contact with the outside world and is literally protected by like an indestructible barrier. They're like, no continuity will get in or out of Wakanda. We don't need to worry about it. What happens in Wakanda stays in Wakanda. It's fine. Because that's the line you draw. Is like, hey, just stay in Wakanda and you'll be fine. Can I go to Korea? Yeah, okay, you can go to Korea. But like, mostly stay in Wakanda. And like, we don't need to worry about like what sort of continuity stuff pops up, or like visual effects being weird, or having Avengers Tower in the background. Like, we don't need to worry about it because it's its own corner. Or like, let's say you want to start a TV show with crazy, super powerful people who've been around forever, but you don't want to fuck up the continuity. The moon.
Put them in
you
Hawaii.
Put them on the moon.
And Hawaii, both islands, secluded places.
Or you put them in the middle of a city that is populated with other superheroes, and you don't have them interact with anyone, because that makes literally zero sense.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what you do. So, the next part that I want to talk about is what I call like corners of the MCU, just like places that you can hide characters so they don't have to worry about continuity.
Magic, Earth, another planet.
Indeed. But let's wrap up this episode before we do that.
Yeah. So thank you, Thomas, for helping us out this week. Well,
does anyone want to give closing thoughts on stuff?
Oh yeah.
I think
Izzy,
this is an experiment,
do it.
But yeah.
So closing thoughts. Oh God. I think just to go back to your thing about continuity. Yeah, it is corners. It's like the thing it is about corners. Like, it's the things that like we really don't realize until we think about it in retrospect. And it's a tactic that Marvel uses to, like, I think, keep their continuity in line, to sort of like remember everything, because everything's designated by place. But the reality is, like, it's gonna cross over sooner or later, and they have to find a way to manage that. Anthony?
It's a beautiful experiment. They just gotta watch out, be diverse, and make sure that they change things up every so often. Otherwise, it's just gonna plateau and be bland and suck, and no one's gonna watch it anymore. And it's gonna be entertaining. And watch out for problematic people. That's it. Yeah.
All right.
Thomas. Thank you for filling in for Chris.
It's my
Chris
pleasure. Absolutely.
Chris is at New York Comic Con getting his frick on.
What?
I don't know. I'm gonna
I guess in terms of handles, you can follow me on Twitter at Delirialin. I use it, I promise.
Izzy? You were saying something else?
Yes.
I
was like, is it handles? Yeah, Anthony.
Oh yeah. Find me at the Pizza Taco on Twitter. Yeah, that's kind of cool. That's what I do things there.
And
Thomas,
don't follow me. Don't search me out. Don't even attempt to be friends with me. I want none of that. Have a great evening, and I'll be back next week.
Yeah. Bye, friends. Thanks to Stephen Molitor for our theme music. Thanks to Charles Villanueva for that sweet logo. And
that sweet logo. Fuck yeah, I love that logo.
See y'all next week.
It's alright.
See y'all next week.
Are we
Bye.